The Books of Doom. It is said that memory does not form in a child until they are past their earliest years, but this has never been true for me. No, Victor von Doom remembers all. Every moment of this life which has tried so hard, yet failed to break me. Every loss, every sacrifice, every vengeance taken by these hands. I could not forget them if I tried. Father never believed me, but I swore that my awareness began in my mother's womb. Perhaps it was the demons Mother was dallying with that made this possible. Perhaps it was their touch that opened my mind too clearly and too early. But regardless, while Father couldn't believe my stories, Mother never doubted me for a moment. Of course, my lovely Victor, you're not like other boys. Mama knows that. Mother's loving arms, how I lived for her embrace, as all boys do. If only I could have known why her hands were always so cold. But it was only years later, after it was much too late. Too late for her, too late for Father, too late for the entire world, that I would learn about her demons. A child of 3 cannot be expected to understand such things, of course. I only knew that my dear mother, who smiled at me with such love, also carried a dark shadow in her eyes, and that her hands were always as cold as ice. Father knew, though, that she was delving into black arts, and he feared it with all his heart. Cynthia, you must stop this insanity. Think of your family. Think of your son. That's what I am thinking of, Werner. Look at us. Our people are constantly in tatters, barely one step ahead of the Baron's persecution. But if we had some power, Victor's life, it could be better than this. Cynthia, please, not that kind of power. Of course, Father was right. Mother did not understand the sacrifices her desires would demand, nor that the power she sought would be beyond her abilities to control. And so, one night, her spells brought disaster to us all. Manipulated by a demon, she was suddenly filled with a thirst for vengeance on the Baron's men. The soldiers who kept our little gypsy band on the run, who beat us and stole our earnings when they could, who'd done worse to our women. I would hear of her actions that night only later, and only through whispers in the dark. But it was said that she killed many soldiers, and at the same time that the demon who allowed her the power to do so took the life of every child in the village as his payment. No. What if this was not... The surviving villagers chased the gypsy witch into the forest, where she fell to a soldier's blade. Father only found her in time for a tearful goodbye, and to hear the final whispered words he would never share with me. I would only know silent grief from him for years after. His mother's final words. Boris was Werner's best friend, and Boris told me the witch's final words were about young Victor, begging, or rather warning her husband to keep him away from her dark places. I suppose, considering what happened at her funeral, that she was a fair judge of what the boy would turn out to be. We buried Mother in an unmarked grave on a hill in the hours just after dawn. The camp was on the move, trying to get everyone packed up and on the road before the Baron's men found out what had happened in the nearby village. No one spoke, but their faces said more than enough. They were scared for their lives. And they looked at my father, their leader, their friend, their healer, the man who'd just lost the love of his life. They looked at him with blame in their eyes. It may be best if our ways were to part for a time, at least, Warner. Boris, you can't be... You don't mean... You turn us out after everything? We're on the run for our lives now, Warner, through no fault of our own. Yes, your witch of a wife did us all in, Warner, with her black arts, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father and mother loved these people. They were our family, and they were going to cast us out. They were calling my mother names right over her grave. I was just a boy, understand, not long past my 4th birthday, but I understand that this was wrong, so I spoke up. Shut up! Of course, even at that age, my intelligence and vocabulary were far beyond most in our group, so I was able, without much effort, to persuade them to see the light, as it were. Father and I were not turned away. What did you say to them exactly? Ah, that's unimportant. I'll tell you what he said, because I'll never forget it. Maybe I was in the wrong. True. To say such things about the woman like that. But young Victor, he chilled us to the bone that day. Shut up, right now, all of you. You say my mother was a witch, that she brought doom upon you all. Well, if you cast us out, I swear to you, I will grow up to be exactly like her. And when I'm truly my mother's son, I'll track you all down, and the darkness that she brought will be nothing compared to what I do to you. And he meant every word of it. Imagine the group of us, frightened of a child. Of course, we knew then that he was already his mother's child. But we never spoke of it again, not within his earshot. For the years after that, we just traveled, always on the move, father with his quiet grief, and me simply watching him. We rarely spoke of mother, and when we did, we never spoke of her magics or what she'd done. I suppose his hope was that as I grew older, I'd forget everything but her loving smile, that I'd lose myself in the happiness of childhood and our travels. As I said, Father always underestimated my memory. But though I never forgot, I did stop dwelling on her loss, as did he, eventually. And as the years passed, our gypsy life did become a happy one. Of course, most of the other children kept their distance from me after Mother's death. Most, but not all. Valeria, no! Laugh while you can, girl. For Victor Von Doom will have his revenge. Oh, Victor, no, my dress. No one dunks Von Doom and lives to tell the tale. Valeria was the only friend I needed, the only one who really knew how to make me smile. Look at us. We're going to be in so much trouble, Victor. When I was 11 years old, the only thing I wanted from the world was to grow up and marry her. Don't worry, Valeria. We'll just tell them you saved me from drowning. In 4 feet of water, Victor? Then perhaps there should be a sea serpent in our story, too. How simple life seems to a child, even to one like me. And how quickly you can be reminded of life's true nature. No, Boris, what are they? Calm yourself, Victor. It's not what you fear. The Baron's wife has taken ill, son, so he has sent his men for a healer. But, Father, you can't go with... It's all right, Victor. I'll return to you soon, after I've done what I can for the Baroness. Be steady, child. Your father's a great man. He'll be fine. No good can come of this, Boris. The Baron and his men, they're killers. They care nothing for our kind. Victor, wait for me. And of course I was right. By nightfall the next day, Father had returned, with disaster at his heels. Don't ask questions, Victor. Just come with me, now. But, Father... I couldn't save her, Victor. Her body was already riddled with cancer. But the Baron, he means to blame me for her death. I stole away this morning and rode all day. The Baron's men can't be far behind. We must ride for our lives. But where could we go? Our tribe was camped at the foot of the Latverian Alps, so the mountains were our only path. And those passes were treacherous, even in fair weather. But this was the end of autumn, so what was treacherous would become deadly the higher we climbed. Our horse fled on the second day, perhaps feeling the rain turn to ice scared her off. Or perhaps she simply had enough sense to know we were damned. 4 days we hid, watching the Baron's men on the lower passes search for us. They, with their full stomachs and warm coats. We, freezing and starving. If it was a waiting game, they would surely win. We can't do this, Father. We have to fight them. There's a spot on the path where we could make a stand. Oh, my son, how like your mother you are, and you're freezing. Come, put on my coat. They'll give up soon. Father was right. They did give up. Just not soon enough. The next morning I woke up with Father's arms around me. But there was something different this time. His grip was cold as ice, and I couldn't make him let me free. Father, please, wake up, wake! I have no idea how much time passed that morning, locked in Father's slow death grip. I stopped screaming and struggling at some point. Resigned to my own death, which was surely not far from me. But Father's cold embrace brought my thoughts back to Mother's hands, At once I understood. I knew that some cold is so cold it burns you to your core, and I knew my mother's true fate. She had died in the service of a demon, and it was with demons that her soul would reside in eternal torment. Some time after that thought, Boris and the others found us. The next days are unclear. I remember that father was not yet dead. I remember him whispering halting last words. I remember the Baron's men taking his body away to present to their master. And I remember being angry, as I was when mother had died, except this time my anger had become cold. Cold like mother's hands, cold like death, cold like the world. Victor? After his father's death, he was so different. He was never the nicest of the boys in our family, but he and Valeria, at least, were close. Yet he even pushed her away after that. I remember she came crying to me. Oh, Sylvana, I don't know what to do. Poor Victor, he's suffering so, but he won't let me help him. Valeria, you can't rely on that one. He was marked by the devil early, and you know it. How can you say that? Do you not remember his mother? What she was? Of course, this was before we all knew that Victor had found his mother's strongbox among his father's things. From that point on, his fate was surely sealed. Mother's effects were a revelation. I had never forgotten her, or that she had danced with demons, but to actually see the spell books, to realize I was blessed with the same talent she had been, I knew then that my destiny was to save Mother, to rescue her from her hellish torment. I would enter the nether realms and find her at any cost. But as the years passed, years where the black arts brought me no success, I slowly turned to science. In my innocence, I thought to combine science and magic, forcing the black arts to follow my rules, not their own. If I was a prodigy at sorcery, then I cannot express how quickly I mastered science. And through this mastery and the things I created, I was able to help our people in the ways Mother had always sought to. I was able to make the Baron's men run from us in fear. By the time I was 16 years old, I was the de facto leader of our clan. My intellect far outstripped those around me, so it was a natural progression. Only Valeria did I see as approaching an equal because of our childhood love. Yet we had grown apart, and when she looked at me, I saw only sadness in her eyes. What more could she feel, I suppose? She didn't understand my destiny. She didn't understand that everything I'd done, all the inventions and displays of power, they were only a digression along my true path, my ever-frustrating attempts to reach the nether realms, to find my mother. All the things I'd taught myself had been with that goal in mind. Vengeance on the Baron's men was simply an afterthought 2 years on the run from these same vicious men. For when I looked at these soldiers, I thought about Father's final embrace and about a mother's fatal mistakes. And what drove me to save Mother drove me also to punish the people who forced her to seek counsel from the damned in the first place. But this vengeance was almost like a game, our people striking a blow against the oppressor and then running for the hills. But one night that all changed. I had gone walking in the night breeze, walking off the frustration of yet another failed attempt to reach my mother. And in my black mood, I lost track of time and place until you halt! I had ventured too close to the route of the wide patrol, and now one of the Baron's men would make me pay with my life. "Stop where you are, Gypsy!" I had left in such a foul mood that I had brought none of my inventions with me that night. Thus I had no means to save myself from a fool with a gun. You're him! You're that Von Doom! The Baron's reward on your head will have me and mine living in a castle, Gypsy brat. No means, save one. What? The cold fire. You seek a reward, you foul creature? I pray you find one. It takes far longer to strangle a man than I had imagined. I kept my hands locked around his throat for several minutes after he stopped struggling, just to be certain. And I looked into his eyes to see if there was any change from living to death. But I saw nothing. Inside, though, I felt the cold vanish as I looked down at this poor fool. My hands began to shake, and I suddenly felt the horror of what I'd done. Like a child, for one last time, I turned and ran, thinking this is what she must have felt that night. Thinking, now I truly am my mother's son. My hands were still shaking when I awoke the next day, and the dead soldier's pathetic face stared at me whenever I closed my eyes. It was appalling. How could I fall victim to such a plague of guilt and anxiety? I resigned to block it out of my thoughts. My family's blood was on their hands, and now their blood was on mine. So, the scales were beginning to balance. Why could my shaking hands not understand that? "Victor, are you awake, young master?" "Yes. What is it, Boris?" "A man is here to see you. A man from the United States." "So, you're the famous Victor Von Doom I've heard about." "I am Victor Von Doom. You're a hard man to find, Von Doom." "By design, yes. What can I do for you?" Of course, my achievements had become so legendary that this general had come all the way from the United States to track me down, apparently with some fear that his enemies would find me first. There were offers of money and opportunities to study in the finest schools and laboratories in the world. On any other day I might have struck a harder bargain, made them pay a higher price for my participation, but on this day, with my hands trembling, all I wanted was to be away from Latveria. "When can we leave?" And so I escaped to America, where I would lose everything.